Come. Place. 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 Sit. I'm going to trained fetch with Juno. Using this, I have a leash so I don't have to keep bending over. Fetch it. Fetch it. I did some pre-training with her. It's not the first time. Working on her holding it. Fetch it. Fetch it. Keep it in her mouth. Fetch it. Out. Got it faster than I could catch it. Let's try again. Fetch it. Fetch it. Just to say, Huskies do not like to fetch. Juno has no interest in fetching, retrieving, or bringing anything back. So she's my project to learn to fetch. Fetch it. Fetch it. Out. Fetch it. Hold it. Hold it. Out. Good. Sit. Sit. Juno, fetch it. Juno, fetch it. Hold it. Hold it. Sit. Fetch it. Fetch it. Sit. Sit. I actually conditioned this with clicker training. I attempted a few other methods, and I reverted back to a click and treat method. Have her hold it. As she would hold it, I would then fetch it, fetch it, fetch it, fetch it, and then out. Give her a click. And a treat. Treat's a little too big. Now we're going to try to get her to fetch it from a little bit further away. Juno? I'm not really using click and treat now. Juno, sit. Using low-level stimulation just to gain attention. Fetch it. Out. Juno, fetch it. Sit. Sit. Fetch it. Fetch it. Fetch it. Good. She picks it up off the ground. Fetch it. Hold it. It's got a real soft hold though. It's not real hard. I can pull it right out. Like that. Juno, fetch it. Fetch it. Fetch it. Fetch it. Fetch it. Hold it. Good. Hold it. It's a real weak hold there, but hold it. Sit. 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 Hold it. Hold it. Hold it. Hold it. Juno, out. Girl. Juno, fetch it. Fetch it. Fetch it. Sit. Sit. Fetch it. Fetch it. Fetch it. Okay. Sit. 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 Fetch it. Fetch it. Fetch it. Come. See if I can get her to walk with it a little bit. Fetch it. Fetch it. Good. Fetch it. Come. Come. Fetch it. Fetch it. Sit. Fetch it. Sit. Good. Good. That's good. That's improvement. Out. That's a good girl. Good girl. Now I'm going to give her a little treat reward for that. And mixing in a couple different training ideas. Juno, fetch it. Fetch it. Problem with treats is now she's looking for the treat. Fetch it, Juno, fetch it, fetch it. Juno, fetch it, fetch it, fetch it, fetch it, fetch it, fetch it. Go back to handing it to her. Juno, out. Juno, fetch it. Again, showing the weakness sometimes of treat training. Now that's what she's looking for. Fetch it. Juno, fetch it. Juno, fetch it. Fetch it. Fetch it. Fetch it, Juno. Juno, fetch. Fetch it. Fetch it. Juno. Sit. 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 Fetch it. Hold it. Out. Sit. 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 Juno, sit. Juno, fetch it. Fetch it. Fetch it. Juno, fetch it. Fetch it. Fetch it. Hold it. Hold it. Fetch it. Hold it. Come. Fetch it. Fetch it. Fetch it. Fetch it. Fetch it. Come. 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 Fetch it. Fetch it. Fetch it. Fetch it. No, fetch it. Fetch it. Fetch it. Okay. Fetch it. 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 Come. Fetch it. Fetch it. Fetch it. Fetch it. Fetch it. Using a little negative reinforcement with the collar. When she drops it, giving her a stronger stimulation. Out. Juno, fetch it. Fetch it. Juno. Fetch it. Fetch it. Hold it. Juno, out. Girl. Fetching 101. Out. Fetch it. Fetch it. Juno, fetch it. Fetch it. Fetch it. No, sit. Sit. Fetch it. Yes. Alright, fetch it. Fetch it. Yes. Good. Fetch it. Yes. Good. Fetch it. Fetch it. Yes. Good. So I revert to a little clicker training to get her back in the game. Go. Sit. 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 Fetch it. Fetch it. Sit. Fetch it. Got your paw on it there. Fetch it. Good. Sit. Fetch it. Sit. Sit. Fetch it. Sit. Fetch it. Fetch it. Yes. Fetch it. Fetch it. Out. Fetch it. Fetch it. Fetch it. Ah, fetch it. Fetch it. Fetch it. Out. Let's go. So clicking when she's doing it right, but I'm not treating every time. And I am using stimulation most of the time. So now she's wanting to grab it. Fetch it. Out. So I actually get a lot of mileage out of the clicker here. Fetch it. Fetch it. Out. Out. She's a very food-motivated dog, so it works quite well. Fetch it. Ask her to fetch. I give stimulation. She fetches. I click. And this time I won't treat. Sometimes I treat, sometimes I don't. The clicker lets her know she is doing what's right. Fetch it. Out. Girl. Fetch it. Fetch it. Bring it. Come. Out. Good. Now let's see if I can throw it a little bit further. Gino? Gino, come. You want to heel? Ready? Fetch it. Fetch it. Fetch it. Fetch it. Out. That was good. Gino, fetch it. Fetch it. Fetch it. Fetch it. Fetch it. Fetch it. You know, fetch it. Fetch it. You know, fetch it. Yeah. Fetch it. Fetch it. Fetch it. Let's go. Out. Right. Fetch it. Fetch it. Fetch it. Fetch it, Juno. Fetch it. Fetch it. Fetch it. Fetch it. Yes. Out. Just sit. Fetch it. Fetch it. Fetch it. Fetch it. Fetch it. Fetch it. Just a protest. Sit. Fetch it. Out. I'm going to go back through this with her a few times. Fetch it. Out. Out. Fetch it. Out. Fetch it. Out. Fetch it. Sit. Sit. Fetch it. Out. Fetch it. Out. Good girl. Fetch it. Fetch it. Fetch it. Ah, fetch it. Fetch it. Fetch it. Fetch it. Fetch it. Out. That's good. Fetch it. Fetch it. Fetch it. Juno, fetch it. Juno, fetch it. 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 There. Sit. 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 Out. Fetch it. You know, fetch it. Fetch it. Out. Fetch it. Out. Fetch it. Out. Sit. Fetch it. Fetch it. Fetch it. Oops, oops, pressing the wrong. Fetch it.